Okay, so let's talk about something fascinating happening in pretty much every workplace right now. You've got people who remember dialing a rotary phone sitting right next to folks who've never ever lived without a smartphone. Now that mix, it's an incredible strength for sure, but it also opens up some really tricky and, let's be honest, pretty risky cybersecurity challenges.
And that really brings us to the core question here, doesn't it? Could your workplace's greatest strength, that amazing diversity, also be its single biggest security risk? It's a huge paradox, and that's exactly the tension we're going to dig into today.
And look, this is not some small niche problem. We are living in a truly unique moment. I mean, for the very first time in history, you can have up to 5 different generations working together, side by side in an office, or, all on the same video call. Just think about that. That is a massive spectrum of life experiences and digital instincts, all trying to coexist.
So what this all leads to is, well, it's a whole new kind of generation gap. We're not talking about arguments over music or fashion choices here. No, this is all about our digital upbringing. Because the tech you grew up with, it basically hardwires how you see the world online, and that absolutely shapes your security habits.
And this gets us to the core idea, the digital divide. It's really just the gap in how comfortable we are with tech. Think about it. The difference between someone who grew up with typewriters and someone who, learned to swipe on a tablet before they could even write their own name. That divide has a direct, massive impact on how people act and react to security threats at work.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting. Security experts themselves don't see the risk as being equal across the board. Not at all. In fact, one study found that a whopping 55% of security pros point to millennials as the riskiest group. But look, boomers and Gen X are not far behind. What does that tell you? It screams that a one-size-fits-all security plan is doomed to fail.
All right, so let's dig a little deeper then. We're going to go generation by generation and really look at the common strengths and, just as importantly, the common blind spots when it comes to cybersecurity.
First up, the baby boomers. Now, these are our digital adapters. They grew up in a completely analog world, but have had to adapt to wave after wave of new technology throughout their entire careers.
And this is the central paradox for boomers. On the one hand, they tend to be really cautious and privacy conscious. But on the other hand, they can be more susceptible to things like phishing emails and phone scams, the ones that are designed to look super official and exploit our trust.
And if you want proof of that cautious side, check this out. Only 20% of boomers admit to reusing passwords. 20%! That's the lowest of any generation. It really shows they have this built-in instinct to keep their digital lives compartmentalized and safe.
All right, next up is Generation X. You can really think of them as the bridge generation. They had an analog childhood, but then a fully digital adulthood. They literally watched the PC, email, and the whole concept of IT security get built from scratch.
So their biggest strength is just that, adaptability. They've seen it all and learned to roll with the punches of new tech. But their blind spot? It's often the newer stuff. They might be pros at spotting a sketchy email, but they can sometimes overshare on social media, which opens the door for scammers to use all that personal info to craft a really believable attack.
Okay, on to millennials, the first truly digital first generation. For them, the internet wasn't a new invention, it was just there. It was becoming mainstream as they grew up. And while that comfort with tech is a massive plus, it can sometimes tip over into a kind of dangerous complacency.
And this chart just says it all. Almost half, 47% of millennials reuse passwords. Compare that to the 20% of boomers we just saw. It's more than double. It's a classic case of convenience battling security. And for this generation, convenience often wins.
It's another one of those paradoxes, right? Millennials are super quick to pick up new security tools like multi-factor authentication. Yeah, that's when you get a code on your phone to prove it's you. They get that. But at the same time, they're the most likely to download some unapproved app or use a personal device, what the pros call shadow IT, just because the official company software feels too clunky or slow.
And that brings us to Gen Z, the true digital natives. They were born with a smartphone in their hands, practically. But here's the twist, and it's a big one. Being fluent in tech doesn't automatically make you an expert in security.
Get ready for this number, because it is staggering. A full 60% of Gen Z workers say they've had zero cybersecurity training. None. We all just assume that because they're great with apps, they must be great with security. And that assumption is just plain wrong.
See, their skills are often hyper-specific. They can spot a phishing scam in their DMs from a mile away, but that skill doesn't always carry over to the corporate world. In an office setting, they're actually more likely to do things like ignore those annoying software update pop-ups or reuse the same password for multiple work systems. And that, of course, is a huge security risk.
Okay, so we've laid out all the different challenges, right? We've diagnosed the problem. Now let's talk about the solution. How in the world do you build a security training program that actually works for everyone? Well, the secret is to stop thinking about a single generic policy and start thinking about a tailored, customized strategy.
And it really boils down to this 3-step approach. Step 1, customize the method. A boring 1-hour webinar isn't going to fly for everyone. Maybe that means short, punchy videos for the younger crowd and more hands-on, in-person workshops for others. Step 2, target the gaps. We know what they are now, right? So instead of telling boomers what they already know about passwords, train them on spotting modern phishing. And step 3, foster mentorship. This one is so important, it deserves its own moment. Because here's the beautiful thing about mentorship, it's a two-way street. You can have the Gen Z employee teaching the boomer how to spot a really clever scam on social media, and in return, the boomer can explain the why behind corporate policy, sharing decades of experience in risk management. It's not just about sharing skills, it's about building respect and bridging that gap.
But, at the end of the day, even the best training is just the beginning. The real endgame here is to build a genuine, lasting security culture. And that means shifting security from being that one boring mandatory training you do every year to being a shared, daily responsibility that everyone feels a part of.
So what does that culture look like? Well, these are the pillars. Of course, it has to start at the top, with leaders who visibly care. But the real work gets done when you involve everyone. Create security committees with people from every generation, design policies together, and maybe most important of all, create a no-blame environment. You have to make it safe for someone to raise their hand and say, uh-oh, I think I clicked something I shouldn't have. Because that's how you stop a small oops from turning into a total disaster.
And when you do all of that, something amazing happens. That challenge we started with, that digital divide, it flips. It turns into an opportunity. Cybersecurity is no longer this annoying thing everyone complains about. It actually becomes a mission that brings people together.
So let's circle all the way back to that first question. Who's your strongest security asset? The seasoned veteran or the tech-savvy rookie? Well, if you do this right, if you build that culture, the answer isn't one or the other. The answer is both.